everybody, and welcome to the Free Trade Mafia podcast. I am Jeremy Jones, and the co-host with Loran Kelley. Loran, would you say hello?
Howdy ho.
And we are here to talk about politics, the markets, and cigars and whiskey. So what are we drinking today?
We are drinking Town Branch, Kentucky bourbon. It's really good stuff. I'm not typically a bourbon guy, but this has got a good, smooth, almost whiskey flavor, and I like it.
All right. Cheers. And then is that a good cigar, or is it just one of your go-tos?
Not really one of my go-tos normally, but it's a Rocky Patel. I smoke a lot of those. This is the 10th anniversary decade, so it's 10th anniversary for them, and they did a decade line, and that's what this is.
Now, you were saying you obviously have a lot in your humidifier, but what happened while you were gone, or what's the story behind that? Why it's so dry?
It's a little dry, yeah. So went to Dubai for a while. People know about that, and during that time, the humidor was not. I was not there to curate it, so it got a little dry. So I might over humidify.
So note to everyone watching and listening at home: if you're going to go to Dubai for 3 months,
4 months.
4 months, just make sure that you have somebody topping off your humidifier with distilled water.
Yeah. My bad on that one. Yeah.
Things that you didn't know you needed to know.
Yeah, and I wasn't planning on being there for 4 months.
That's
so
true. It's only supposed to be a
it
couple weeks.
Quite a show, but yeah, and we'll talk about that later.
All right, so Dubai, free trade. Dubai is a weird place.
Little dry.
When we're talking about, because it's not what I would consider like a free trade area, but it kind of is. Right?
No, it very much is.
But it's still under this umbrella of a very strict kind of regime, right?
Yes and no. I would say Dubai has the veneer of a strict regime. And I'm sure, I was there for 4 months. I wouldn't classify that as living there. So even with the exposure that I had, I wouldn't consider myself an expert on Dubai or the UAE. We're really talking about the UAE because the UAE is 7 kingdoms, and the 2 most popular would be Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Those are 2 kingdoms under the United Arab Emirates. So the kingdoms are an emirate, is what it is.
Yeah.
So Dubai and Abu Dhabi both have the most free trade. Dubai being the most free trade, and when I say free trade, yeah, it's Islamic in the fact that you've got laws there, but if I've said to other people, it's like if I were to knock you out, take you on a plane ride, and you woke up in Dubai, it would take you a long time to figure out you were not in America. Like the surround, it looks Western.
So all the signs
are everything's in English. You do have Arabic. That's the things you start to notice.
Yeah.
But everything's in English, and everybody drives on the right side of the road, and the freeways look the same, and they're kind of laid out the same. Of course, the one thing you would notice is the buildings look a lot cooler. I mean, the architecture is amazing in Dubai. It's very different there. It's like living in the future, the way I put it.
Yeah.
I went to 2 different restaurants where I was literally served by a droid. Didn't have any human interaction with ordering my food, and the robot brought you the food. I mean, it was pretty cool.
That's cool.
Stuff like that. But I don't want this to go dry, but it's dry.
But so it's not like, is it like a free trade zone?
Very much so. That inside of Dubai itself, there are free trade zones, economic free zones.
So like normally in the UAE, like alcohol consumption is not allowed.
Even in Dubai, the consumption's allowed, but you're never going to go into a gas station or a convenience store and be able to buy alcohol.
Yeah, you can't take it out of the establishment.
You can, and as a traveler, you won't notice that because it's like you go to a bar or a restaurant, you get whatever whenever.
Yeah.
It's there's no dry times or any of that either.
Yeah.
And boy, do they consume their alcohol. So the stuff that they would call haram or whatever, it's like they really don't listen to it. And the people, even the natives there are very westernized in a lot of ways. Not completely, but it runs the gamut.
Yeah.
the Emiratis, which are like Arab Emiratis born in the UAE, which are like one of the smallest segments of the population.
Yeah.
It's like 60% Indian and Pakistani in Dubai. But some of them tend to be far more traditional, at least in their appearance. They wear the white robe with the headdress and all that, but they're driving Lamborghinis and Lexuses and whatever. But but that's it. I mean, that's the way it is. But as far as being economically free, it very much is because there's no taxes.
Wow.
When I say no taxes, there's a 5% sales tax on everything, and I mean everything. You buy a car, you buy a house, you buy property, you buy anything. 5% sales tax, but there are no other taxes. You don't file for taxes in the UAE. You don't have to report your income in the UAE. You could pay. If you have a business, you can pay your employees in cash because it doesn't matter because you don't need a pay stub or records or anything like that. It's up to the person to keep their own records. And so like and if you capital gains tax, there's no capital gains tax. If you bought a property for $1 million and you sold it for $3 million 10 years later,
you keep all the
and the only taxes that are paid was when the guy that bought it from you is paying 5% on what he bought it for.
Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah. So whoever buys it from you would have to pay the 5%.
Yeah. You're not paying.
Now, does that support all of their infrastructure and all that stuff, or is that usually fed from other means?
So there is no oil in Dubai. So it's not oil money. Abu Dhabi, I believe, has oil. And I'm sure, I don't know exactly, how the economics of structure of the government of the UAE at large is.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's money that gets spread around, but Dubai makes the most money out of the whole country. So, and there's no oil. So you can't say it's oil money, actually.
Yeah.
It's actually money from commerce.
Yeah.
And I said Dubai is less of a country, more of a club. It's like a rich guy's club, what it is. And so there's a lot of financial law there. And there's laws that they don't enforce. There's laws that they do, like, prostitution is illegal in Dubai, but you go into a club in Dubai and it's very clear they don't enforce it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like everywhere.
Yeah.
And they don't care. It's because, the rich playboy guys, I'm not that type of person, but the rich playboy guys that would go
Wait, you're not rich or you're not a playboy?
Yes, I'm neither of those things. Despite what people might think, I am not. So they want to attract that kind of person, so they're not going to enforce things like prostitution very hard.
Yeah. It's one of those things that they just sort of like will tack on when they're already trying to get you.
Yeah, or if it's a serious like human trafficking ring, they do go after that. I'm not justifying any form of prostitution. I'm just saying that's what they go after or what they do. But if you steal a car, or you defraud someone, or you misrepresent yourself in business, they will
come at you hard.
You'll probably never be seen again. It's because what they're protecting this area of the world where all people who want to participate in free trade can go. And I spent a lot of time. I do smoke cigars. There's a really nice cigar bar there, and it's called the Address Downtown Hotel there. Really cool cigar bar, excellent staff, great selection of cigars for Dubai, which is going to surprise you. There's not a lot of good selection of cigars in Dubai, and there's a lot of. They do have tariffs now. That's another point. Tax. Yeah. So the tariffs on alcohol and tobacco is pretty high. So you pay a premium for alcohol and tobacco there. So the selection's not great for what I'm used to here, but for Dubai, Address Downtown has a great selection. But in there, my point is that's where there's like 3 or 4 good cigar bars in Dubai, and that's where like the rich guys hang out.
That's where the business gets done.
And I've met some very politically and financially powerful people, and had wonderful, great, frank conversations with them over a cigar and an old fashioned, you know, and they also serve sushi. Like, I've never been in a place before where I could get sushi and a cigar at the same time. Like that.
I never thought of that.
That was rad. That was like the best. I missed that deeply. Like,
maybe that should be another podcast we do, is just sushi and cigar pairings.
Exactly. And talk about free trade. Like in the United States, if you serve tobacco products or you allow people to consume tobacco products like smoking, you cannot serve food.
Yeah, that's true, but I don't know why they did. I mean, I think the secondhand smoke stuff. And
Rob Reiner and his stupid liberal, like, anti-smoking bullcrap. Like, I don't smoke cigarettes. I smoke cigars once in a while. I'm not condoning smoking. But, you know, like the other day, I was just the other day, I built an AR-15 with my pastor, and we were in line I was just getting an energy drink because we were going to burn the midnight oil, literally building these guns. And there's a sticker on the checkout at the gas station that had it said flavor ban. I'm like, flavor ban? What is a flavor ban? You know? And it's right underneath the Beretta 9mm silhouette with a cross through it.
Yeah.
They don't allow Beretta 9mm in there for some reason. I don't know why.
It's because they're Italian.
Yeah, probably. So, anyway, they had that sign up, and I asked, I was like, "What is a flavor ban?" Like, she's like, "Oh, it's cigarettes with flavor infusion in them.
Yes.
They banned those." And you want to talk about a government that treats its people like they're not adults? They're putting a ban on cigarettes that have flavor infusion.
Because, they're saying it's because they don't want to attract kids.
Okay, but you can't buy a cigarette unless you're, 21 now?
Yeah, I don't know.
But 18 or 20. Well, I think it moved it to 21. Yeah, you can't. So, again, we have this. It's the same with guns, right? We already have laws in place that you can't put advertisements below a certain level because of kids. That's already there.
Yeah.
And now it's getting to the point where a guy who, I don't smoke cigarettes, but a guy who does can't enjoy his, black cherry flavored cigarette because of no reason. Because I bet you if you were to do a study on, how many children or minors smoke cigarettes because of flavor infusion.
Exactly.
It's got to be pretty much zero. If you're going to make that if you're going to go to a kid in high school who wants to look cool with his cigarette on the corner after school, which I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but when we were in high school, that was the deal.
Yeah, there was an allure to being.
It was like, you're a rebel. Yeah. Like, I doubt the flavor in any way whatsoever affected their decision making.
Well, in fact, it's kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they would be willing to smoke or consume terribly tasting things just because of the cool factor.
And I doubt a black cherry or a strawberry or watermelon cigarette really tastes good.
So that's what they've done with the vapes, right? They're trying to say, vaping's a real problem with kids, and instead of trying to regulate or figure out what's really causing it, they just go after what they can, which is like the drunk guy looking for his keys under the streetlight, right? So, you walk by and somebody walks by and sees this drunk guy looking for his keys, under a streetlight, and he's like, "What are you doing? I'm looking for my keys. Why are you looking here? It's the only place I can see." Right? He's only looking under the streetlight because it's the only. If he goes in the dark, he can't see. So instead of actually going and looking for his actual keys where he probably left them,
right?
It's the same thing with regulations and especially with you mentioned guns. They try to change laws and rules because they're like, okay, we have a problem with gun violence or gun crime, so we'll create a law, right? It gets pushed through or whatever. It doesn't work. So then, that didn't work. Let's try something else. And instead of trying to actually look at the root problems, they just create regulations and laws against what they can. And so, in the case of tobacco, it's
right.
They're going to regulate the flavor because they can't regulate other things. In California, they did the nicotine pouches like Zyn and stuff. They had to get rid of all their flavors because even chewing tobacco flavors, I believe. If it's considered a child flavor, so I think some of the mints and some of the other ones, but any sort of fruity flavor or anything like that.
And I'm glad they've done that because I've got sick and tired of seeing 9-year-olds with a packet of whip. That was a huge epidemic. I'm glad they put a stop to that. Thank you, government. I mean, it's been
I'm so glad
you've saved democracy. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and you're using our money to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thomas Sowell, one of my favorite guys. He wrote a book. Both the things are escaping my mind. The name of the book and what he called it. But it's like these almost in every case, and I mean almost as in like 99.9% of the time, people that are writing regulation and laws about any industry have nothing to do with that industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll just talk about what I know. The ATF, the people that run the ATF. I mean, just look at Diddleback. He was like in that hearing where they were just asking him poignant questions about components of firearms.
Yeah.
And he straight up said, "Well, I'm not an expert in firearms." Like, what in the holy crap are you doing running the ATF then?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and you've been in it as your career for
yeah,
how long?
Yeah, and I'm just going to say it. Like, I believe the ATF is a horribly unconstitutional institution from the beginning. It's a bureaucracy that shouldn't exist. But if you're going to have it and you want somebody to run it, it should be somebody like me running the ATF. Mm-hmm. Like, because I understand not because I'm special. It's just that I understand the industry. I understand what it's supposed to mean. And a bureaucracy, a bureaucracy is on paper, and it never is. It's supposed to be every bit as much about protecting the industry it regulates as much as it is about protecting America from poor decision makers and actors in that industry. That's what it's supposed to be both. But the ATF clearly is on one side of that fence. Yeah. And when it seems to be the status quo and the accepted practice of, well, if you want someone to run the ATF, it needs to be somebody that understands that we need more gun control. And like, no.
Well, it's just a foregone conclusion that guns are what cause gun violence. Is what is where their mindset is at.
Right, as proven by the epidemic of children with chewing tobacco. Right. So, like, it's not a problem, but it's not the cause of the problem. Yeah, you're right. Like, it's lazy, and I think more than lazy, it's just politically expedient.
That's kind of my point about the drunk guy in the streetlight. It's the I wouldn't even call it low hanging fruit. It is basically, okay, what can we measure and regulate, and then we'll do that. And there's no actual like proof or evidence that it is what the ultimate game, the ultimate result is not even being it hasn't been impacted. But according to the media and the politicians, it's like, oh, they passed this law or they did this new thing, and then a few years go by and nothing changes, and they're like, well, oh, we need more we need more control, more regulations because well, then what happened to the last one? Should we just get rid of it? And I'm not a political expert by any means, but I still feel like there should be certain things like, oh, if it's this type of law, it automatically expires after 5 years unless we ratify it. And every single one of those laws and regulations should like, you can't create one that lasts longer than that unless it has like a super majority, and then even then they all have expiration dates.
Yeah. And before then, I mean, we have to get back to, if we're going to make laws, then it can't be, you can't have the very agency that enforces the laws making them. And that's the problem, right? You have the ATF enforces these laws. Okay, for the sake of argument, fair enough. All right, and there's a lot of stuff I swallow being in this industry that I am 100% dead against. But it is the law of the land, and you're not going to accomplish anything, by just, if I were to just pull up a black van to a high school and start selling AR-15s, that's not going to work. But but if you're going to do that, then we already have codified constitutional modalities that are supposed to be the only way you can legally create law in this nation.
Exactly.
And you have the separation of powers. You have the judicial branch, legislative branch. Started getting to me. Legislative branch and the executive branch. they're separated for a reason, and the ATF is supposed to be the executive. They enforce the law.
Yeah.
But they also enforce penalties, which is judicial.
Yeah.
And they also write the law, which is they have all three powers in basically one person. That's a king. Diddleback, in some ways, has way more power than Joe Biden does, and it's power that directly regulates Americans in their living rooms. It's so funny that liberals have all this thing about like, get out of my living room, get out of my bedroom. It's like, you wanted them there.
Yeah.
You're the one that put them there.
Yeah, the neoliberals. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, and when it affects your thing that you're into or you find sacred, now it's a problem all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, either you're for freedom or you're not. Right? There are things that I am dead against the government regulating that I am dead against.
Yeah.
As mentioned, I built an AR-15 with my pastor. I'm going to let you guess where my religious and political views lie based on that sentence alone. And so, but I am dead against the government regulating any of the connotations of what I disagree with in there. I'm dead against those things, but I'm dead against the government forcing you to act as if you see things my way.
Yeah.
That's stupid. I want you to be who you are and act who you are and make decisions on your own. I'd much rather it be that way. So, first of all, I know who I'm dealing with, and people have the freedom to be who they want to be as long as you're not hurting other people, directly hurting other people. Like, then that's the end of it, right? And, the popular to say now it's as a libertarian point of view. I just think I want to pull that away. It's just common sense.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, no, duh. Like, that's the way it ought to be. But,
I like Nassim Taleb's phrase, there's the golden rule, which is like, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you.
Yes.
Well, there's one that he came up with, or I think it's attributed to him, and it's don't do unto others as you don't want them to do unto you. And
I remember reading that.
Yeah, it's a little bit more powerful. I think he called it the silver rule or whatever. But the idea of being like, you can, build an AR with your pastor. It's not like we're expecting everyone else to, or making it a regulation or a requirement. And that's a weird example, but it's so true about, so many laws and regulations that we have to deal with. It's they're trying to control, to make people do things, or make them not allow them to do other things. And it's like, look, if you don't want to do that, then don't do it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the arguments come into play. It's like, well, you are hurting people because, these firearms are what's causing this. And that goes back to the argument. It's like, well, is it actually the firearm or is it not?
Well, there are more firearms now in the hands of citizens than there have ever been.
Yes.
And violent crime has been going down. With a little blip in the last couple of years.
Yeah. So, I'll say this, like, I'm on fire right now for this whole Baltimore settlement from a lot of people that have no idea what they're talking about.
Okay, so before we jump into that, we are going to go into that in more detail. I just wanted to bring up that today's the day after the Waco massacre, right? And you had mentioned like the fact that a lot of what we talk about when we talk about free trade is incentives, and the ATF was up for a budget renewal.
Yep.
They weren't really taking that seriously in the government, and so Janet Reno, Bill Clinton, and all these people were involved. And so what the ATF was like, we need to put on. I think they called it Operation Showtime. Like they were like, we need to have some kind of big event to justify growing our power, growing our budget, including a large part of their budget before that raid was VHS tapes, because they wanted to do a cops style, like have all this like footage of them raiding this place and like, being heroes. And that ended up in 75, I think, people killed, half of them children.
Yeah.
And then of course, the celebration of this heroic effort, and then a lot of mudslinging or disparaging of what was going on there with, at the Branch Davidian compound. But again, it was because they want, it's like, your local traffic cop, if it's up to him and, his like direct income is based upon how many tickets he can write out, when it comes time, to like come up with new regulations to generate more funds, of course he's going to create new laws and regulations to collect more money,
Right.
and we're not saying obviously, but this is human nature because of incentives,
Yeah.
and that's what you're saying is we have pretty stringent laws around, market monopolies, right? And mergers and,
Yep.
competition clauses and things like that.
Right.
But when a government in particular, any sort of large bureaucracy, there's no, like, they have the monopoly, right? So it's like they're going to tell customers, their customers, like, okay, this is illegal now and it costs this much when you break this rule,
Right.
and so it's like
Right.
they have, but in private, in private organizations, we don't have that. We don't have that ability. It's the market won't let you.
Yeah.
If you start creating things inexpensive, poor quality, horrible things to the community, the environment, it's like, of course, other people will go to another
Well,
supplier.
and now you're seeing one of the many value adds of a free market. And what I think a lot of people miss about a free market, like when I talk to people and I mention free market, in like there's people that I will just say on a particular political bit cringe at that word free market, and I have them describe to me, it's like, well, why don't you tell me what a free market is?
Yeah.
And what they describe to me is basically the dead political definition of fascism. I don't mean to be hyperbolic with the word fascism. I mean, like, if you look at what fascism, national socialism is,
Yeah.
economically and politically, that's exactly what they describe.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the 100% opposite of a free
Mm-hmm.
market.
Yeah.
Because it's collusion between big corporations and big government, right? Because, yes, National Socialism is socialist, but it is also nationalist. It's both.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why both sides claim, oh, it's left wing, oh, it's right wing. It's national
Mm-hmm.
socialist.
Yeah.
So it's nationalist, which makes it seem right wing, and it's socialist, which makes it, both of those things are true.
Yeah.
So they have a collusion between the national government and large businesses that contribute to either the nationality or the nation itself.
Yeah.
And that's who they pick winners and losers.
Yeah.
And that's what they think free market or free trade is. And it's like, no. What's funny is they're the consumer. And in a free trade, a true free trade environment, in nearly all cases, and I will say there's an exception here or there, the entire sphere of power resides in the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
All of it.
Yeah.
Because, perception has to be managed by the company, which means you have to have good product, you have to have good service. I freely admit right now Polymer is struggling with certain things, and it's causing us to not have a perfect scorecard on those things, and it's affecting us. But we're going to get through it, and we'll be better. But it's that is an example of consumer-driven market, right? I mean, that's what that is.
Well, in this just sparked a thought in my head, this conversation, and it instead of the way we're currently operating, which is basically the government is being used by companies and corporations to damage their competitors, to grow their own market share, to
right.
It's like, what if things were the opposite? Like, no, like the government, if it is, of course, we're both very much into little to no government wherever possible.
Right. Yeah.
But in the small amount of funds that they would have goes toward facilitating, market competition. Make it easier for small business loans, easier for resources to make to create more competition, to give more power to the consumer to be able to choose other options.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody does that. If you do, like, leave a comment or shoot us a message.
Yeah. I mean, I've said before, I think I said in the last segment that we filmed, I mean, that Yelp does more to regulate a business than any regulatory body ever really could.
Yeah.
All the reviews, you said, I mean, you get 3 or 4 bad reviews in a row, it's not going to recover from that, and even if it's a just or even an unjust, review, the end result is either the company's going to clarify its position in this thing, or fix it and be a better company, or go away, and then every single one of those things is a positive for the consumer.
Yes.
Because you have either a bad company or bad product going away, or a bad company or bad product, or maybe a malperforming company getting better, and their products get better, and the service gets better. You know, that's what a free market does, right? And so, and again, the power and influence comes directly from the consumer themselves.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And we're both business owners. We've owned businesses. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's probably like close to 20 between the two of us. But one of the things that you realize very soon, if you're working directly with consumers or customers, even B2B, you want to close that feedback loop. Like, you want the feedback to say, like,
100%.
is this? Yeah, and so
100%.
someone's like, this isn't. You promised this, you delivered something different.
Yeah.
Hey, I have an idea. This would make my life so much better if you could incorporate this or include this.
Yeah.
That's closing that feedback loop, and that's all the reviews, but especially Yelp and Google.
Yeah.
They just close that feedback loop. Now, are there going to be people who are loud? And the thing is, the one of the drawbacks to things like reviews is, like, I'm only going to review something if it's an absolutely terrible service or it's an absolutely excellent service.
Right.
So you get those kind of two extremes.
Yeah.
And net, if you have 10 positive reviews for every one bad review, it usually works out. It usually kind of works out in the end. But even then, you want to have those kind of conversations, because as a business owner, it's like, this is an opportunity to improve, and I don't have to try to guess where I should go next or what I should devote my resources to.
Yeah, and it's a benefit to the company because it's free crowdsourcing. It's free sort of focus grouping, if you will.
Yeah, can you imagine if we had reviews for the government organizations we had to deal with?
Yeah,
how many stars would you give the DMV or the U.S. Postal
right.
Service?
Yeah, 100% true. Like, to be terrible, but great, because it'd be terrible for them. It'd be great for us. But that's the point of this democratic republic we have, right? That's what was, at least, let me rephrase that. That's what's supposed to be the point of this democratic republic. Like, everyone in their current position is fireable. And that's the thing we forget. Is like the point of, and the one thing that I would really like to close is this term limit thing, where, like, these guys spend their careers as a senator in the same seat for 40, 50 years at a go, and the amount of damage done by that person, Nancy Pelosi, in these places, that yeah. I mean, that's got to go. But getting back to my point, the original idea behind a democratic republic, which means we're a republic with democratic trappings. We're not a democracy with Republican trappings. We are the other way. We're supposed to have a representative government where these people have a certain amount of time to make it or break it. They either do well and they continue, or they don't. And the problem is, so much has been manipulated through gerrymandering and other flat out fraudulent means,
and just finance, money being involved,
or other things, that it's no longer that anymore, right? And there's a mentality shift where we just accept it. Like, when Ron Paul was a big thing, I was a huge Ron Paul guy, and it was so frustrating to me talking to my family and other supposed freedom-loving conservatives that at the time were, like, backing Mitt Romney, which is so funny because every one of those people, I'm shouting out, you know who you are. Whenever I was talking about, like, Ron Paul versus Mitt, and they were all supporting Mitt Romney because he had the best chance to win, they all hate him now. Yeah. They all call him a rhino, and they act like they never supported that guy before. And I will look at them dead in the eye right now and say, it's your fault. You did that.
Yeah.
Because of your mentality of choosing the lesser two evils, and your mentality, this horrible idea we have right now of, well, it's just the way this is this guy, he's going to be there forever. And it's like, no. Right now we have a peaceful means of removing these people from these positions. Bless you. Through, I'm not trying to sound like, some constitutional FUD, but we have elections, we have these things, we have these mechanisms, and right now we've let it go so far that they're just nakedly corrupting them right in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as long as that corruption benefits our side, we're okay with it.
Yeah.
I would not be okay if Ron Paul stole the election and became. I wouldn't be okay with that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not the.
No matter how big of a fan you are.
Yeah, does these cult of personalities have to go away? But my point about bringing up Ron Paul in the beginning is just like we had a guy in Ron Paul that clearly through his track record was a true believer. Took one moment. Let me turn that off. Sorry. He was a true believer. That down there. Apologize. And took the hits and took all the negative press and was not popular amongst his peers because of the stances he took, and he was always consistent throughout his career. You had exactly what everyone wished they had. Like, it's everything you love about Donald Trump, minus the mean tweets and the dumbass shit he says sometimes. Like, you had that in Ron Paul. Yeah. And what's funny to me is like everyone Donald, and I'm just gonna say I'll vote for Donald Trump. I'm gonna do it again. And I've made many predictions online that he's going to be the next president. I'll say it here. I think he is because of that's what we're looking for. But what irks me is you had the statesman version of that.
Yeah,
the guy that was mature, the guy that understood, I think, better on how to conduct government, and everyone shot him down simply because, and primarily because he wasn't backed by the official GOP.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think finally, I hope this sticks. I hope everyone out there that I'm addressing, you know who you are, have learned your lesson. And Donald Trump, one thing I'm kind of grateful for with him is they're learning that the GOP proper is not on your side.
Yeah.
If you're a conservative. And they are every bit as much acting against him as the Democrats are. And a lot of people are finally realizing that.
Yeah.
But it took this, to finally get people to see that. And by the way, I'll admit I didn't vote for Donald Trump the first time because I was so used to this whole group of people just being in this ilk. And I'm like,
I have never voted for Donald Trump, and I don't think I'm going to this year.
Really? Who you going to vote for?
It depends on who ends up being in the. I mean, I'd rather vote for a third party than the two big parties.
I see that.
I'm a big Vivek fan,
but he's a big Trump fan.
Oh, I know, and that's the only thing. That's the only thing is if he ends up being a major part of Trump's party or whatever his team. I mean that would might swing.
I agree, but it's just like but
and he has some. He had some wins and he had some terrible losses and things like the Trump stock ban.
Yeah, and that's true. Yeah, I can't deny that. That was a problem. And
but to your point, your point though is again it's been if anything the positives come out of the last
years. And it's like, and when I say lesser of two evils or not going for the lesser of two evils, it's not picking someone that's perfectly in line with everything you see.
Yeah,
it's that. Is this guy truly? Are his convictions real?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think there's a person on earth that's going to be able to look you in the eye and say Mitt Romney's convictions were real.
Yeah,
like no, they're not. Were Ron Paul's? Yep. Are Donald Trump's? I would say yes, they are. Do I agree with everything he does? No, I don't. Do I see him as a lesser of two evils? Also, no, because it's someone that I don't agree with everything he does, but at least I know he believes in what he's doing, and what he believes in believes in what he's doing mostly aligned with what I'm saying.
Well, one thing, and this is what I think is that we can always depend on him to do what's best for him. Yeah, and so if what's best for him is what's best for the United States or what, then it's good. But then when those situations come up where it's what's best for him and his brand and what he thinks that is best for the government, then he'll do that. And at least that's somewhat consistent.
Yeah.
He's not being swayed by the next election or what the party wants him to do,
Right.
or big lobbyists and things like that.
100% true. Yeah, and so but what I appreciate him for is the fact that the GOP and other mainstream Republicans go so hard against him. It's not about Trump. It's about the fact that all these other people that laughed at me 15 years ago,
yeah,
are all. And by the way, they don't acknowledge it. I'll just say this: they don't acknowledge it. Are basically saying the exact thing I was saying 15 years ago, and now, but what they don't do is say, "Dude, you were right. Holy cow!" Yeah. They don't do that.
No.
And then they'll have these conversations with me as if they always agreed with me. Am I right? Yeah, right. I'm like, really, dude? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Really? Like, the whole George Bush thing. Like, I remember there was a gentleman who was a YouTube influencer guy, a friend of mine, and he was a huge Bush family fanboy. And I'm like, dude, no. And I put some meme out there kind of making fun of Daddy Bush, and he got all mad about it. And then Barack Obama ran for president against, no, I made this wrong. Hillary Clinton ran for president against Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And basically he backed Hillary between the two of them. And then this dude been on this rant about George Bush. And all I did was said, I told you so.
Yeah.
And he argued with me about how he's always been this.
Well,
and it's like, no, dude. Like,
and I don't know why it doesn't happen more on other platforms, but with X, people will tweet stuff and then it gets put in the record, and I just love seeing the contradictions.
Oh, yeah.
Between people's posts. And you should, if you're not changing your mind
also
in your opinions on a regular basis, or at least over time, there's something wrong.
I agree.
I agree. You are now leaning into the NPC territory, right?
But there is a major difference between evolving your position based on experience, logic, and reason, and flopping your position based on what's popular.
Well, that's what I mean, and it's very different. It's okay to change your position. So, like I said, if someone had two posts and they were very different, but something changed in that meantime, you're willing to own it and be like, I was totally wrong. It's okay to admit you're wrong.
Right.
Like, we're all wrong all the time, like that's part of living and life and wisdom.
Right.
I feel like one of the definitions of being wise is how many course corrections have you made in your life?
Oh, yeah.
Deliberately, not because of popularity or some other factor.
You've known me since grade school, and a lot of people think I'm like very consistent. Like, oh, you've never really changed. You know me. Like, when I was in high school, I was actually far more of a straight arrow than I am now.
Very true. Very true.
And I was very much a stereotypical Republican type guy.
Yes, very judgy.
And very judgy. And I was like, there's no way you would have ever caught me with alcohol or smoking a cigar back then. I bought a cigar on my 18th birthday just because I could. It was like, oh, I can buy a cigar now. Yeah. But I didn't start smoking cigars until I was in my 30s, number one, and I didn't start drinking anything at all until I was 20 years old, when I had the first beer I ever liked, which was a Guinness, and that was the end of that. But I still don't drink to get drunk. I don't do that or anything. But I saw things. I hold a lot of the same values I had then, so that's consistent. But I either have changed some of those values or I handle them in a completely different way.
Yeah. I'd say one of the biggest changes, and I think this is just part of maturing and growing up, is you start, having values and principles. And a lot of times when you're younger, or sometimes people never grow out of this, is you assume because this is what you believe and what you feel, then everybody else should follow along.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the biggest changes that I've seen with you is like, obviously you've changed your position on a few of those little items or topics, sure. But in general, you're like, yeah, I don't care about that anymore. You know,
Yeah.
that they want to do their thing. I'm doing my thing. They do their thing. I'm
Right.
more happy that they're found something that's good for them than
Yeah, I was that
enforce it
guy
on
that
them.
I would see people doing things that I would not do myself, and it would bother me.
Yeah,
Like I would go home thinking about
yeah.
it, and what a dumb way to be. I mean,
So much wasted effort.
yeah,
and energy.
and it's funny. It's based on, and well, I'll say this: it's based on the same values I still have.
Yeah.
That didn't change. It's just that I wouldn't say it didn't change as much. There are values that have changed with me, but it's like I was not anti-government before.
Yes. Right.
I was actually very pro. I would say very pro, but I was like, I couldn't conceive of like, why do people hate cops so much? Not that I hate cops,
but you had never at that time had had any problems or anything.
No,
so
and then I had some experiences with cops, and it was like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's like you get there's a lot of the wisdom comes from walking a mile in someone else's shoes too, for a minute, and it's like, it's very funny. Like I think about that, how I was, and I cringe sometimes. I'm like, I can't believe I said that or I did that, or like, what was like, and I was like the Jiminy Cricket of our friends group. You guys would hide shit from me, like, don't tell Loran.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's part of how you developed into such a good, salesperson, or just be able to convince people to show, because you had to like make those kind of arguments and things with folks.
True. There's a I won't enter. He won't like I mentioning his name, so I won't mention his name. But he's in another room right over there, and him and I would, because the three of us grew up together, and him and I would spend hours, especially when I'd like stay the night at his house or whatever when we were kids. We would go till the sun came up. And to the point where you guys were all annoyed. Like him and I would just go at it with like, and I will say that guy, to bring the Bible into it, say iron sharpens iron. That guy honed my ability to make a point, because I was kind of close-minded in those days, and I had no experience in life at all. But there, I'm trying to say this without sounding arrogant. Having a higher IQ leads to you thinking you know something you don't sometimes, because you have a really good way of reasoning your way through something, even something you may not know much about.
Yeah.
And it can lead you to be so much more wrong than you would have been.
A perfect example of this is anybody who is famous, or has a successful business or company, listening to them about topics that are outside of their specialty.
Oh,
so people just assume,
totally.
And this is a true thing for all humans. We assume if this person is, very wealthy, for example, especially with their like more of the self-made bent, then it's like, well, we should listen and follow their recommendations with political stuff. And it's like, that has nothing to do with it, right? I have an engineering background, but I also spent decades in the, kind of the fitness world.
Yeah.
And it's like, you start to realize that like doctors have no idea generally, not all physicians, about nutrition. Like they do it for like a semester.
Oh yeah.
And I would have clients who would come back from their doctor's visits and be told the exact opposite of what they should be doing. And then you start to realize, like, wait a minute, like doctors are trained to try to fix injured, broken, sick people. They don't know anything about taking relatively healthy people, and making them better.
Sustainment and maintaining.
Yeah, and so like I said, listening to an actor talk about politics, unless they have proven it or studied or researched it, it's like they have no business discussing these things. And that's what I love about actors, that just totally like, I don't know what, like I pretend for a living. Why would I have anything to say about politics?
Right. And it's like, and it's funny because conservatives tend to, the second there's like a conservative actor out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, they're all over that.
Yeah.
Because he's one of the rare ones. He's with us!
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they do the same thing the left does.
Yeah, exactly.
Because everything that dude says is like gospel now.
Mm-hmm.
Because, he's a conservative actor. He's in Hollywood, but he's a conservative.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, good. I would argue that probably makes him, if not smarter than the average person in Hollywood, it does make him at least, because it's harder to be a conservative in Hollywood. At least he has some substance to it.
He's probably thought out those positions.
Yeah. So in that sense, you could probably reasonably make the argument that he is more intelligent than your average Hollywood person. But I try my best to not, even though like someone says something pro-gun and they're from Hollywood or whatever.
Yeah.
I do my best to not get sucked into, I should listen to what this guy's saying about anything.
Yeah.
He's still an actor.
Or just take everything with a grain of salt.
Right.
And so looping it back to Ron Paul, we kind of went on a tangent there. Just for you guys who are your first listens, this is what we do is constantly tangent and go through different
rabbit holes
upon rabbit holes. So with the Ron Paul thing, he embodied these principles, these values. It proved it countless times, and the so-called conservatives at the time wrote him off and went with a safer option. And lost. And now I think people have realized part of the reason why we're in this position is because people keep making those choices.
Because, who's president right now? Joe Biden. Joe Biden was who? He was the vice president of who? Barack Obama. Barack Obama ran against who? Mitt Romney. Thanks. Mm-hmm. I want to thank the people that were anti-Ron Paul for the position we're in. It's not the liberals' fault. It's your fault. Yeah. I will say that until I die. You did this.
Yeah.
All those family members and all those people I talked to about this that laughed about it and were like, I just can't support, or the lame excuse of I don't like his foreign policy, which today, when you're looking at what's going on in Israel and all that, and by the way, Trump's foreign policy was almost exactly the same as Ron Paul's.
Yeah.
Getting out of all these wars, focusing on America first, make America great again. Mm-hmm. That's what it was, but it was in a different packaging. Yeah. So, I get a little mad. I'm upset about that because it's like now it's affecting my business, it's affecting my people because we have a regime now that is hostile to freedom, hostile to, in particular firearms and business in general.
Yes.
They're
hostile towards success or to competence.
Yes. And I think it's this. I think, in general, not everyone, I'm not going to say to a man or a woman.
Or absolutes in general.
But by and large, if you work in government, it's because you can't hack it anywhere else.
Or you have a desire for the power it brings.
Right. But there's far more power in being a CEO of a company than that. Because, you as a senator, singularly, you don't have a lot of power. Mm-hmm. Right? As a head of a bureaucracy, you do. But that's the getting there is it's not a feather in your cap for accomplishment. It's just harder to. It's rare. Yeah. It's like there's not as many of those positions to fill.
Well, I would assume
because it's not based on competence.
90% of the senators and Congress people in general are using it as when they first go into that level of politics, it's because they're planning on being part of a president or in their cabinet.
But if you start a business or you become a CEO or you're in a director position of a big department with some budget, you have more power there. But to get there requires competency and intelligence, which does not exist in most people that hold positions in government, especially career. And there are exceptions. I am not saying if you're in government watching this and getting all offended, I may not be talking about you specifically, but I'm sure you also agree with me because if you're in government, you're around those people, right? Like these people have no competency. Like AOC. I'm sure she was a wonderful bartender. I'm sure she was great at that. But what else is she good at? She has a degree in economics.
So this. Yeah.
Wow. when she talks about economics, my 21-year-old daughter, when she was in like 15,
Mm-hmm.
well, she's 22 now. She was 15, could run circles around her.
Yeah.
On just because of what I taught her because
Exactly.
unlike AOC, I actually participated and continue to participate in the market, in the economy, in a real way, where you live or you die, or you eat or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You get paid or you don't get paid. That woman's never made a payroll in her life.
Yeah.
You know, and yet she has a degree in it, and yet she, so that's, I guess, I'm rabbit holes. Just there's a person she's in politics because there is no way she could hack it as a CEO.
Yeah. Or
there's no way.
Yeah.
She would lose her
She
ass
would tank
in
any organization she tried to.
I doubt it'd last 12 months.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about expiration dates for laws. I mean, this is where term limits come in as well. Is like that, there needs to be a start and a finish. Like people need, like, politicians, should have limits, because it's not only, it's not only that we don't like them, so we want somebody else or whatever.
Right.
It's just one of the things in my observation is when you have people who are in politics as their whole career, they start to accumulate scars or baggage or however you want to put it, and I think that affects their decisions and their positions over time. Where if, for example, if you have somebody who's fresh, who's established competency in other fields,
right,
and is now moved into politics out of an obligation,
yeah,
and then goes through and works for their constituents and their principles,
right,
and then maybe grooms somebody to follow them, because they know I only have so many terms to try to change as much as I can, and then I'm going to go off into the sunset like I'm supposed to,
right,
and so it's the same thing again with laws. Laws always usually have the best intentions. They have a certain desired effect they want to get to. Well, if they all stop after a certain amount of time, and the only way to continue them is to revote and maybe even modify or change it, because well, this didn't work exactly the way you planned, instead of being like, this has been done, okay, it's going to work forever, let's put it away.
right.
With the way it didn't, I don't think it was as obvious in the past, because things didn't change as quickly as they do now. But things are changing so fast with technology and society in general that, like, a lot of times by the time it even gets written into a law, it's already out of date.
Right.
And with regards to, we talked a lot about politicians today, but what I see when I look at Congress and I look at the executive branch is I see a monarchy. Like, these people get into office and they're there until they die, and it's like, that is absolutely the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing with our government.
I've made jokes before. They're kind of serious. That it's kind of we gotta shit or get off the pot kind of a joke. And I do mean it, but it's also a joke. That we either need to go back to limited to no government, or just be a monarchy. And either of those options is better than what we have now. Because I'm what you would call a medievalist. I am very much into medieval history, and I read about it constantly, all the time. And I am not saying monarchy is an ideal. In particular, I'm speaking about feudal monarchy. I'm getting a little specific, but I'm not saying it's an ideal situation. But I will say it is actually better than what we have now. And the reason being is, people's like, oh, they got absolute power with these kings. I'm like, well, they really didn't have absolute power. In philosophically, they did, and when it comes to ceremonially, they did. But practically, they didn't. Meaning that they were under constant threat of their own subjects putting them to the guillotine and cutting off their head.
Yeah.
Which happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same reason when people bring up the Wild West. This is why I love history. I love contextualizing reality. And that's what true study of history does. Contextualizes past reality into a more accurate picture.
Mm-hmm.
We know about Jesse James. We know about Billy the Kid. We know about these guys. We know their names. Why do we know their names? because they're the exception to the rule.
Mm-hmm.
So if we went back to the Wild West, this is the little to no government scenario, we would almost never have a Billy the Kid or Jesse James.
Yeah.
Because if they were all the time everywhere, they would have been part of the miasma of all of it. Mm-hmm. But they're not. Yeah. They stand out. They're the extremes. And the reason why they're extremes is for the very reason they all died. They were shot by people that got sick of their crap.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the advantage of that. Well, the advantage of a monarchy is actually very similar. You get sick of the king's crap, you kill him. Right? And by the way, our founding fathers came from that whole experience. And the second thing they put down on the Bill of Rights was a Second Amendment. Not because they were fighting the British in the Revolutionary. No, not about muskets. It was because they came from a culture of the way you regulate a king is you show him the gallows. You go, anytime, buddy. There's more of us than there are of you. If you study anything about, medieval history, there was a constant, I wouldn't call it a worry, but the smarter, wiser kings acknowledged that openly. They would admit it. I'm going to end up in the guillotine if this keeps up. Yeah. They would, and that's just that. And the other factor of a monarchy is you have a family line that's been in control for whatever. And by the way, it's not like they were there forever. If you research it in any way, you understand that kind of changed hands a lot. So, but at any rate, in most cases, the person sitting on the throne was groomed from childhood to love his country, to love his subjects, and to administrate that government as best he could with that kind of training, knowing that if he doesn't do it right, some other king or some other lord's going to take him out, or the peasants will do it. Like, the threat of death was very real to any ruler in feudal medieval world at all times.
I mean, there's a reason why it kind of became the default, or at least it was very common in the past.
Right. And there was a reason why, by and large, the people willfully subjected themselves to a king. And it was willful. Yeah. Because if you read any writing, and I'm not, again, this is starting to sound like an apologist for autocratic government. It is not. I'm just giving an example of why it's actually, we're so bad off, that is better.
Yeah.
Because right now, if you were to say, how many people in this country are going to write a poetic, wax eloquent diatribe, not diatribe, I'm conflating words, but statement about how they love Joe Biden versus King Richard the Lionheart and what people who were under him said about him. People who fought and died under him said. People, they admired that man in a genuine way. It wasn't lip service because he was a king. It was a genuine love for their ruler. And it's so foreign to us. And it's foreign to us. It's not because they were dumb, because they were born, millennia ago. That's what they had. They had a ruler that gave a shit about their country and their people. And they did. I mean, if you do any kind of research into these people, you realize that the bad kings were bad kings or queens because they didn't care. Maria Antoinette was beheaded because she didn't care.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. It's about care. So now we have a system where it's such a corrupted version of a democratic republic that they don't have to care. And they don't. That's my point. It's so now we're at a point, it's we're in this kind of hybrid where we pretend at being a democracy and a republic. We pretend at it.
Yeah.
But what we really have is this elitist, it's not an autocracy. It's more of a, what's the word where you have just a group of people that rule, the word's escaping me. Oligarchy. Thank you. That's exactly what it is. So we have this oligarchy now. That's really what it is. An oligarchy is way worse than a monarchy. Yeah. Way worse.
Yeah.
And, more people die and more people get oppressed in an oligarchy than they ever will in a monarchy.
Yeah.
So I'm against a monarchy. I'm against going back to a feudal system of government.
Yeah.
But I'm saying we're so bad now that that's better than what we have
It's
today.
starting to look.
You know what I mean? Like,
pretty
you
wild.
know, yeah. So that's just my point.
So going back to the Second Amendment, you know, and the codified into our whole system of government is this ability to, you know, not that it's not desired, it's not, you know, something that we want to happen, but the idea being like there is repercussions if people try to be more tyrannical or what have you. Like there is it's about that feedback loop. Again, the part of the problem with like feudalism and stuff is there's no real feedback loop because there was plenty of people who ran, you know, countries or whatever kingdoms, and it didn't matter how good or bad they did, they never lost their job unless they got so bad they got murdered.
Right. Yep.
You know, and having so the voting is sort of a form of feedback of a feedback loop, like I was talking about earlier, and so yes, the Second Amendment is part of that. I just wanted to use that as a segue into kind of what you alluded to earlier. Is for those of you who don't know, Loran Kelley is the CEO and founder of Polymer 80, and in the firearms world, the part that we're in is definitely on the is kind of a niche version, but also at kind of like the tip of the spear when it comes to rights for individuals.
Yeah. So
why don't you give some backstory of what happened recently with this?
So right now, like, I'm even under a little bit of fire from even my own community because of a settlement that.
How did this court case start in Baltimore?
So I'm being sued in a lot of different municipalities because they can't. Because I will say this:
Donald Trump is probably one of the only people that is currently being sued by more people.
I think so. I think that actually might be an accurate statement. Maybe that's why I'm voting for him. I can just relate to him right now so much.
Yeah.
But where to begin this? So yeah, we're being sued by multiple municipalities because what we deal in is an activity that is a tradition in America that goes back before we were a country, and that is building and using your own firearms for your own purposes.
Yeah.
Because unlike what the government will tell you, a serial number on a firearm has absolutely nothing to do with public safety or solving crimes. None of that. Because if you logically think about it, it actually does nothing.
And to kind of even take that step, you know, to a larger picture thing, it is more of a bigger picture of being self-reliant.
Yes.
You know, so whether that's being able to grow your own food or
right.
You know,
which the government hates any form of self-reliance. They hate
exactly.
And this is a self-reliance that could literally be used against them directly, and that's what this is about. Like, you know, so you know, they came up with the term ghost guns, which I think the industry has embraced, and my industry, just to do a little segment on that, another rabbit hole, is like people like, oh, I don't like the term ghost guns. Blah, blah. To me, I'll take any term they come up with, and I will use it against them. So I embrace the term ghost gun. I think it's I'm a little jealous that I didn't come up with that term myself. It's good job. So ghost guns, right? So Polymer 80 is, I would say, if not the singular, at least the by far leading agent in why that is a controversy today in the country. Polymer 80, I will say, proudly did that. And what they don't like is it's no different than when you finish it at home. The only thing I will agree with anybody that's in the opposing court is, yes, when you finish it, it is no different than any other firearm. It is no different. 100% true. When it's finished. At the time of the sale, it's just a part, and it's not regulated. And so because serial numbers actually have nothing to do with public safety, the law is that if you manufacture a firearm at home for your own purpose, now with some exceptions in some municipalities, check your local and state laws, everyone. you don't have to put a serial number on it. Because again, that law was created to track taxes paid from the manufacturer to the dealer to the end user that finally purchased it from the gun store. And up until fairly recently, nearly all states were what we call no-doc states. If I sold a gun to you personally, we didn't have to do documentation because the purpose of the serial number has been done, which was to pay taxes. Why the ATF was formed under the auspice of the Department of Treasury. They were tax agents. That's what they are. Now they're under the Department of Homeland Security because good old George Bush, looking out for our freedoms, created that wonderful organization. So so now it's shifted, and in the minds of people, they have been fooled into thinking that the ATF is some sort of anti-terrorist group, which is, thank God they're really not, because you do not want your safety in the hands of those really competent people. Anyway, I digress. So what's been going on is you have these groups called, the primary one that's gunning for us is Every Town for Gun Safety, and you have the Brady group. All these know-nothing, very emotional people that blame guns for all the ills of America, and they're like vultures. They look for tragedies that happen, and they cling to them. They're like ambulance chasing attorneys, and they use these horrible things that happen and horrible acts that people do to rail against inanimate objects that they don't like. And
well, I mean, let's be real. The people who generally are leading these organizations, it has very little to do with the end result. It would be less gun violence and less gun
nothing
deaths.
at all.
It is that they're hopping onto a train of people that are like frustrated or have been personally affected by gun violence, and so they leverage those people's emotions to establish themselves to have power and
right.
Money.
So yeah, exactly. And so now we get sued all over the place, and it's at a time when the federal government has basically outlawed our flagship product, which has cut us off at the knees, basically killing our revenue right out of the gate. And back in 2022, December 27th, the ATF issued a letter specifically calling out Polymer 80 and saying all these products are firearms, and now you can, like, just out of nowhere.
So
again,
this is how the government can works in a lot of respects.
Correct.
Is they, everything that Polymer 80 does and stands for is perfectly legal. It would be it's nearly impossible to change those laws.
Correct.
So instead, what they will do is initiate these sort of rule changes or litigation and raiding your business with your tax dollars to try to put you out of business, basically.
And it must be said that all this stuff happened basically immediately after, everyone that, because if you've been paying attention to my company for any length of time, you know that we were raided in 2020, right after Joe Biden won the election. The timing of this stuff just can't be ignored. So Joe Biden wins the election, we get raided by like 40 agents in where we're sitting right now, in this building. And total BS allegations around. And that was the beginning of what turned out to be a 2-year-long criminal investigation against Polymer 80 and myself personally and others. 2 years. And I think something like 250,000 documents they went over. Mm-hmm. And the discovery process went on forever and ever and ever. And finally, at the end of it, there was what's called a cooperation agreement. And,
Wait, so no criminal charges were brought?
None. Zero. And no, in fact, in my quote-unquote cooperation agreement, there was no wrongdoing that even had to be admitted to by Polymer 80 because there was no wrongdoing.
Exactly.
And
so essentially, they shut us down for a short period of time. They caused all kinds of additional work and inordinate amount of legal fees.
Yeah.
And in the end, they were like, "Oh, yeah."
And what they wanted in it was like, okay, well, you can't sell these. You can't sell these in this format because we consider them firearms. It's like, guys, it's a phone call. Mm-hmm. Polymer 80 is not Sons of Anarchy. We're not here like selling guns. Like I said,
I'm like deliberately to.
We're not breaking any laws or whatever. Like we may disagree with certain rules, but we're not going to break the law because what we want to do is we want to protect the customer's rights to build guns at home, and we're going to fight for that
and protect their identity.
To protect their identity.
So this is something I really want to put forward too, that I don't think enough people understand, because there's still these sort of rumors going around that during that raid process that Polymer 80 had given up customer information.
Nope.
That is 100% patently false. There was some customer data that was got from the shipping company or something like that.
Yeah, they got it from our credit card processor.
Yeah.
At the time, which we got rid of.
Which we immediately got rid of.
So they didn't get it from. We told them to kick rocks and pound sand, and they went to the credit card processor and scared the crap out of them and got it from them. Now we're with a solid credit card processor that won't do that to you, and well, you know, it's much better. But never came from P80. And even if if the cooperation agreements out there, they ask that we share them customer data that we actually didn't have. And that's the funny thing, and they're salty about that, which is why I think the December 27th letter came out, is because 2022 is when they could not find any criminal activity. Boy, did they want it, but they found none. No charges brought, no admission to guilt, and they're like, okay, well, we just want all this data for this sales record. Well, before the raid, we switched systems and all that stuff. All that data is gone. We try not to actually retain a ton of data, only enough to make sure that old orders get fulfilled and people are taken care of and what have you. But we do as much as possible, we actually get rid of customer data. And that's just because we just don't retain it. And they asked for stuff that was gone before they raided me, which is really funny. And they're like,
yeah.
So, yeah. So if you read it, it looks like I agreed to give them customer data, but it's customer data that they knew, not just me. They did this 2-year investigation, $250,000 document. They knew I didn't have it.
Yeah.
But it was just this massive. I'm just going to try. I can't say what it is, but I would say it's some sort of massive clerical error or something that worked in everybody's favor. So in this criminal investigation, they got nothing, zero, and so so there's that. So we get this criminal investigation, and my whole concern the whole time was, you're not getting my customers' information. That's not going to happen. So when we finally got the proposal, here's what we want, and I was like, okay, because I was giving up nothing. Because I agree not to sell in an area that I'm already legally barred from selling to.
Well, let's
as long as it's the law. If there's a law change, I can do it again.
Yeah, so to kind of transition from that, like raid, for example, and not giving over customer data into some of these newer lawsuits.
Yeah.
Let's just put it this way: when people, if you see people online, or when you perpetuate this myth that we are bending the knee or giving customer data over, that's exactly what they want.
That's the point.
That's what the government wants you guys to think, so we go out of business, or companies like Polymer 80 go out of business.
Right. Yeah.
And the whole reason why they keep changing these rules, they're trying to scare people away. The people who are they own guns, they like guns, so they want to learn more about it, maybe, and so they want to try to maybe build one at home. But now it's like, I don't know the laws or rules. That's too sketchy. I don't want to touch it. They just want to frighten people away from this part of the industry. And the same thing goes for like, oh, you can't do business with them. They gave away all the customer data. They're perpetuating that, and people in our community perpetuating that is doing exactly what they want.
Yeah, and I would say right now, I'm not going to give blanket customer data to the government ever. I'm just not going to do it.
Okay, so this Baltimore case.
So Baltimore. So everyone's
it's a civil suit, right?
It's all civil suits, because every time the criminal case, of course, ended up with nothing, and anytime it's a legal suit about the law, we win. Mm-hmm. We sued and beat the governor of Nevada here. We were in federal court twice against the ATF, the attorney general, and the director of the ATF. We won both of those cases, and now we're added into the Vanderstock case sitting in the Supreme Court, which I'm very confident is going to come out in our favor too, but who knows what they're going to do? I can't really say. But up to now, every time it's a legal battle, we win. And they know that, because they know the law's on our side. This pesky Constitution just keeps getting in their way. So civil suits is where they go. And so this civil suit with Baltimore, and they're like, oh, I'm getting called a traitor and everything in the book personally. Like,
So they sued us saying that Polymer 80 was somehow contributing to their violence.
Yeah, their gun violence, which
apparently Baltimore was never had a problem with any sort of criminal activity or violence
before Polymer 80 came along, right? And so this is where the I guess misunderstanding is. People look at the case and it's obvious. Yes, the mayor of Baltimore, I'm just gonna say, isn't smart enough to do this on his own. He definitely had help. I've heard him speak. I've watched him, and I can't believe that this guy's my opposition.
And also doesn't even know anything about the industry.
He doesn't know anything, but the industry doesn't know anything. He's knee-jerk reacting. Unfortunately, and I will say this, I feel for him, I do think he had a friend that suffered at the hands of a violent, terrible person who used one of my products. That I believe is a fact. But that's separate.
He is a politician, so his constituents believe that the guns are a problem, and a certain type of gun.
Yeah. So anyway, so we get sued saying that we contributed to the gun violence there, when actually what's funny is right now the mayor and the governor of the state are running around to media outlets bragging about ever since 2018, gun violence in particular has been going down in Baltimore.
Interesting.
Because the year we started selling Polymer 80s into Baltimore was 2018.
So what you're saying is, according to their logic, that Polymer 80 being involved in their area actually, or potentially, decreased crime.
Yeah. So when we were talking the final stages of this settlement, which, by the way, you need to understand was like almost a year long, and back and forth, and basically us telling Baltimore to F off most of the time, because they demanded some crazy stuff, and I'll go into that in a minute. But when this came up, I was hounding this to my attorneys. I'm like, the violent crime is going down. Here's my settlement offer. Everyone in the state of Baltimore, or Maryland, excuse me, gets a 20% discount at polymer80.com. That's my settlement offer.
Because they clearly
you could ask if my attorney would be willing to tell you that is exactly what I said to him.
Because clearly, the Polymer 80 has been helping
the crime is going down ever since we've been in there. It's so you can say on the surface that their case is so weak and our case was so strong. Why wouldn't you take this to trial? Why wouldn't you do that? You will obviously win. Like, okay, well, let's go back to Donald Trump. Let's point to Donald Trump's case in New York with that woman that anyone with half a brain knows. She's lying and not telling the truth, and she's actually a little insane. It's that woman that, on podcasts, I don't know what I can say. She said that grape was sexy, to Anderson Cooper, which they abruptly stopped that interview immediately.
Yeah.
Because it was undermining everything they were trying to do, because that woman was nuts. But Donald Trump owes like $400 million in a civil case. Why? Not because he was wrong or right. That the right or wrongness of the case, you guys need to understand, the rightness or the wrongness of the case is not what matters when it's a politically charged case. Where does the jury or the judge stand? And they have bias. End of discussion.
Well, the New York case, right? Right now, he's supposedly has to pay all this money for a private agreement between a private bank and an individual or his company to say, we'll give you this much money at this rate, and and then now years later, some courts are getting involved and saying, no, that was not okay.
Yeah, and that's I think another case, right?
Or Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
He had an agreement with shareholders and board members about his compensation. He took $0 compensation, and if he hit these targets, he would get this type.
Yeah, and he had that guy had a contract.
This is under contract, and everybody agreed it was great, but one person who probably is again politically motivated and decided to try to take it to court. And then a judge decided it was unfair.
Right. So in Polymer 80's case in Baltimore, the judge and the court that we had to deal with were absolutely not in our side, like on our side, or I would say unbiased even. The demands that Baltimore wanted was, I believe, to have all the customer data, here we go again, from all the sales of all of our products in Baltimore and Maryland and the surrounding states.
and the surrounding states. So this is they're trying to get customer data from sales, not even
because they find their way into our state. And the way they did the press release, they said that we have to give them sales records. That's not entirely true. That was a hyperbolic statement that I'll get to in a minute.
So,
no,
to put a finer point on it, if you live in a state neighboring Maryland,
they wanted your data.
You're fucking welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Because they're not getting your data, by the
way. They were going to try to take the purchase data, right?
Which
again, you could use for
right. And so in the press release, people might be confused right now. I was like, well, the press release says I had to give them sales data from this. It's not the sales data. Like, we went back and forth on that because that was the stickler. I was like, I'm never going to give you customer information. That's not happening.
You're not going to treat
and if you were to ask any of my attorneys, when you want to talk about where Loran is like not negotiable, it comes to customer data.
Yeah.
I will take whatever fine or penalty they give me before I give them customer information. Mm-hmm. So they wanted that. They wanted it badly. And I'm like, no. And so then what it came down to was, the settlement was this. I'm not going to give you customer information, and I'm not going to stop selling products where I'm allowed to sell them. Mm-hmm. Those two things are sacrosanct. So how about this? I'll tell you how many units I've sold in those areas, and that's it. It's a number. It's like in the first quarter of 2024, we sold 150 units, and I'm not even going to tell them what specific model numbers. Mm-hmm. Units of items that are covered under this, which is, unserialized blanks. I sold 150 of them to Pennsylvania and 0 to Maryland because that's the other thing. It's like I'll get to that in a second. But anyway, on the customer data thing, it's just a number. It's literally a number, a singular number that represents all of it. No names, no addresses, no information. So that's one. So did Baltimore really get anything? What did they get? Nothing. Maybe a little a data blip.
And I think we forgot to mention that Maryland had already, in law, they legally had banned these products from their entire state.
And here's the funny part. It's going to hurt them because they inflate their numbers. So now that we're turning over numbers to them, they're going to actually see the real numbers that move to those states. And they're going to have a harder time lying to you about what those numbers say. So actually, this hurts them because they lie. I will say this openly. They lie. Or they definitely exacerbate the truth.
They
manipulate data. This is actually going to make that a lot harder to do. Number one. Number two, the banning Polymer 80 from selling into Baltimore. Well, guess what, everyone? I haven't sold a unit in Baltimore since 2022 because the law says I can't ship any there. There was already the law. Mm-hmm. So there was no gain there.
Yeah. And no loss for...
Right. And again, guys, this was all back and forth to protect your data, to make sure they can't get it or don't get it. Because if we would have went to trial, I'm telling you that Baltimore would have gotten everything they wanted to get. And by the way,
let's take a step back. So this is what they wanted.
This is what they wanted, and then what was so we got that we've covered the sales records, which is actually just numbers, and the banning of selling into Baltimore, which was already the law. So the third stickler is like, yes, this is the only one where there's any kind of real change. Is like we had to put wording in our dealer agreements for people in those surrounding states that if it's a physical point, it's not online, which is 90% of the sales. If it's a gun show or something, they have to ask for an ID. Like if you're buying alcohol, you got to prove that you're 21 or whatever. Do I agree with that in principle? No. But I'll just say it this way. If you can't see why, let me just say that none of that's recorded. It's literally, there's no picture taken. Nothing's written down. There's no documentation of anything.
Yeah, they're just verifying.
It's just verifying whether or not you're a resident of Maryland or not. And if you can't figure out why that's not a big problem, I can't really help you. I mean, like that's just, and so that's it. So what did they get? Nothing. When we were heading towards a meteor where we were just going to get smoked. And everyone loves to kick around a term that a influencer said called precedent. Like,
this is setting a precedent, dangerous precedent.
no, the precedent we set was you're never getting customer data from Loran Kelley or Polymer 80. That's the precedent we just set. And you're going to see, because we're under fire, you're going to see similar outcomes. You know why? Because we're winning, actually, guys. These settlement doesn't mean loss. You have to understand the courts you're in, the juries you might get, will likely get, and the judges you have. You have to understand these factors, and that's where you play the cards you can play to come out on top. And boy, did we come out on top. That's the thing that people need to understand, is they gained nothing new. There's nothing new they got. The only thing new they got at all was like a guy's got to look at an ID for 2 seconds. That's it. And again, I'll leave it up to you to figure that out. Leave the
state.
Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. I used to live in California. I moved. Yeah. Vote with your feet, maybe. And we're fighting. So I paid and incurred debt legally for my attorneys and stuck with a $1.2 million penalty, so I don't have to give them your customer data, so I can continue to sell into the surrounding states because the law allows it still. And so I can live to fight another day. And it's not just that, not just live to fight another day, but now we have precedent set that customer data is the sacred cow. You're never getting it. Not happening. And there's at least still some states and some, local governments that support what we did. And we're going to always sell it. We're not going to let the anti-gun people keep us from selling to pro-gun areas. We're not going to let that happen either. So those are two major victories that would have been catastrophic if we went to trial. Going to trial would have been a bad idea to say. And notice I've not yet mentioned that Polymer 80 did this to save the cost of going to trial. I haven't said that yet. No, is that a factor? Yeah, because it would have been a lot more expensive. But that's okay if the outcome would have been what it should be. But it wasn't. So it wasn't about saving the money, even though we have been completely decimated and we're kind of depleted on our ability to fund these legal stuff. Like, for now. That's just a for now thing. That fat lady is far from song. But I'm trying to get you guys to understand that. So that's what they asked. So they asked for all this stuff, and what they got was basically what they already had. And I had to pay them $1.2 million to keep it that way. That's the settlement. I hope people understand that.
Mm-hmm. And if they had gotten what they originally wanted by going to court, what was the details of that?
So they wanted the first settlement offer we got back from them, and this is after what they were going for. What they're going for was even more than this. The first settlement offer we got from them was a $60 million penalty.
60.
And that was less than what they thought they could get, which, if we went to trial, is probably true. We don't have that kind of, people think, I'm going to say right now, we have 17 employees. And we're filming this in my conference room on a budget because I am not rich. Polymer 80 is not a huge company. There was a minute where we were making really good money. But we've been attacked so much. It's pretty much, that holiday's over, but we're not done. It's not doom and gloom. I'm just saying this perception is just silly. And these people think that that I made up money and Polymer 80's got endless cash. No and no, and so they wanted $60 million. They wanted to not be able to sell Polymer 80. Not just these surrounding areas have to have new language in their dealer agreements. No, they wanted them to not be able to sell anything at all in those surrounding states.
So again, if you live in those neighboring states,
You're welcome.
you're welcome.
And then they wanted all the customer data. They wanted all the full sales record. In fact, they wanted all of my sales records. All of it.
The entire
The whole country. They wanted everything.
Mhm.
Because, they in every time in discovery, by the way, this is common. Every time in discovery, that's what they ask for. Our sales records. And every time, eat a bag of dicks. No. Like, not happening.
Well, you got to remember what the ultimate goal is. They want to stop this, put us out of business, all that stuff. So just like when there was a raid, they went through $250,000 documents because they're looking for any little thing.
Anything that, and it was so, thank you. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that was so void of any of that.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to tell you right now, we may be a small company, but we take our job seriously. We take this business seriously. And we run it like a business, like a real company. Like I couldn't tell you, I wish I could have filmed it, but the expressions on some of the faces of some of the agents when they came in and saw Polymer 80 for what it is. Maybe one of these days we might do a little tour for everybody, online. But like, we run this like a business. It's a real warehouse with real equipment, and people show up and they have, for a while we had, like uniform T-shirts that people wore here every day.
Quality assurance, and all the.
We had quality assurance. We had, and we had, and they saw all this and they were like, oh, like they thought like we were on some pirate ship, like. I don't know what they thought. It's just funny, the perception that a lot of them still have. It's just, and there was.
And I think, I think that there's, because I do see this online sometimes, is that people realize, fuck the government, send it anyway, ship it anyway. Who cares? It's illegal. It's unconstitutional to do this.
That's the end of doing it ever anywhere.
That's the short.
The second you do that,
literally, not only will people go to jail. That ends it. Period. The
so
long game is to beat them the right way.
So it's like, here's the deal. You're right. This is a tyrannical, oppressive government. This is a tyrannical, oppressive government, which means openly doing something like that, you will get tyrannical, oppressive government consequences, which doesn't help the effort. If it helped the effort, that's a different thing entirely. And to all of you people who are jumping at the bit to sue me or press charges on me for something, I don't mean to encourage illegal activity. What I'm saying is there's a difference between being some keyboard FUD who does nothing for any of us other than analyze the actions or inactions of companies and individuals and then comments on them, and people who actually get off their ass and do something. Like, there's a possibility if things go a certain way, I lose everything I own in my house. And I never once complain about that. And I don't make it a big deal. And I don't, because that's not what's important. What's important is Polymer 80 maintains its integrity and maintains its principles, and we do everything we can to get out of this hole. And there's a lot of customers that have put a lot of faith in us and put their money where their mouth is, and they're sitting, waiting for us to deliver stuff. And I don't take that lightly. And it's not a small deal to me. And it's not that I'm trying to raise money on their backs to pay for these legal fees. I'm saying that we're all in this together. And I'm doing everything I can to recover the business at the same time fighting all these legal battles. And in both cases, because of each other, I'm doing it with both my hands tied behind my back. And I'm not saying again that to complain. I'm just, this is the position we're in. Okay? So I'm, there's a reason I don't run out and do a crowd fund, and I don't run out and make a donation page, because first of all, those don't always work the way they're supposed to. And second of all, I'm not going to throw a pity party about this. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to work my ass off until we get through this, and if P80 goes down, I'm going down with it. That's true. So, what I need though is for all of you out there that are part of this community. I need you to understand this. And if you're an influencer and I reach out to you, answer my fucking messages, by the way, because that kind of demonstrates to me your character and how you really feel about this. Like, you sit there and say things about this case, and I reach out to you and say, hey, you can ask me anything. I'm willing to come on your show. I'll answer. I will answer for this to you face to face and to these customers. Like, make, if you're going to be picky about who's on our side in this industry, be picky about who you listen to and who's telling you stuff about this stuff. Because if all they're telling you is conveying you information that's already out there and not giving you anything new, like perspectives from people that are actually going through this, are they really on your side, or are they just throwing a bunch of clickbait on the internet so they get stuff so they can sell other products?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody who's kind of, if you will, an influencer or a leader in our community, and they're taking headlines that come from the mainstream media and then try to use it to rile people up without actually... You haven't spoken to any mainstream media people because we know...
I tell them to kiss my ass because I know where they're at. I could succumb to the temptation of becoming some sort of celebrity. Cody Wilson, a good friend of mine, was that for a minute, until what they did to him, which is kind of a little scary. But no, I don't give these guys the time of day because they don't matter to me. They don't. If you're in this industry and you have a small YouTube channel of 20 followers and you're fighting, I'm interested in you. That's what matters to me. I'll talk to that guy. I don't even know their names anymore. I haven't had cable in almost 20 years. I don't give a crap about mainstream media.
Yeah.
If, Tucker Carlson, yeah, because that guy talks to the right people. Anderson Cooper, I want him to reach out to me so I can tell him to kiss my ass. That's where I'm at with it, So there are big names that I would entertain talking to and get on their show, because they talk to the right people, and it's not about everyone that's in the tank with us. It's even people that disagree with us.
Yeah.
But in a venue that's open-minded, it's like Joe Rogan would have a lot of people that maybe disagree with us or watch a show. Fine, but at least the venue is fair and open, and I'd have a chance to say what I need to say, and it won't be spun a certain way. But these other media outlets, no. And we have a lot of people that are supposedly on our side in these influencer realms, that they're nothing more than, it's just reaction videos with extra steps. I could go and look at legal documents and things and I can make a YouTube channel right now and just talk about what settlements have been made, current events or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not attacking that. But if my job, if I'm billing myself as someone that's informing the public and people in our interest group about these things, but I ignore the very people that can tell you the most about it, you have to question whether or not that's actually what they're doing. Just throwing that out there. I'm not naming any names,
or just being a little bit more focused on clicks and maybe volume of content.
Yeah, and I understand they're making episode after episode. I mean, I'm doing this just on the side, and it's kind of like, wow, this is more work than even I thought it was, and it's great. I actually love doing it now that we're doing it. But, I respect that. I do, but if you're billing yourself as something, then be that something, or not, because there's certain content that has been unleashed specifically about this thing that we're talking about right now, that the first time I saw it, even though it was not presented in a way that was 100% derogatory to P80, but it was derogatory to P80, and even the catchphrase in the headline on it was actually false. And it was like, no, it didn't.
Which, hey, mistakes happen.
Mistake happen. Yeah,
But
absolutely. And by the way, I'll
opportunity,
rescind everything I just said. In fact, I purposely named no names. I'll rescind everything I just said if these people actually do respond. I know they've read my messages. I know that, and they're not responding, which I find highly suspect. But I'm looking to tell you the truth, and that's anyone that knows me will tell you that's who I am. I'm just here's the cards, they're face up. And I've done that to my own detriment. I don't know how many times. And and sometimes I'll get cynical about it for a minute and be like, but you know what? That's who I am. I'm just going to tell you how it is, good, bad, or different. And I will say this right now: anybody that sees this that wants to talk to me, that's in any of those capacities that I said I would talk to, I'll talk to you, and I'll even say you can ask me any question you want. Unless it's something that would hurt an active case I'm in, again, for the purposes of protecting the industry that we're in, I will absolutely answer it as candidly as I possibly can, because I don't have anything to hide here. There's just been a lot of bad stuff Polymer's gone through in the past 2 years in particular. The legal stuff is just one of the things,
and maybe that's something
for another show. But yeah, another thing. But and first, I don't want this show to be about Polymer 80, but it's directly related to what we were talking about, anyways. But and it's important. It is important that I use this platform right now to actually get that message out. So I will do that. But anyway, that's it. So yeah, I mean, thank you for bringing that up, and it needs to be said. So no, Baltimore actually didn't get jack shit from that, except a $1.2 million penalty out of me. And at gun shows, once in a while, a guy's got to check an ID or two before he takes cash, before he sells a Polymer 80 blank to them. And it doesn't apply to all parts. It's just the blanks, the 80% receivers. So, but everything else already existed, was a thing already, and no, there are not sales records going to anybody. It's literally quantities. So no, and anyone that's in any of you AGs that are looking at this video looking for juicy things to exploit, just know that I don't care what you say or do. I'm not giving you customer data. It's never going to happen. So, you'll have to come to my house and shoot my dogs and me. It's not going to happen. So, that's the point. I care about. There's a reason I'm in this industry. It's not. Polymer 80 emerged out of an industry that was not what it is today. And I like to think that Polymer 80 made it what it is today, or at least had a very influential hand in making it what it is today. And I can't say that without mentioning Aries Armor, Dimitri Karas, and those guys who really paved the way for guys like me. And if you don't know who they are, welcome to the show. But those are the guys that really paved the way. And boy, did they pay a heavy toll before I even came on board. We just got bigger, right? And I think we got bigger for a reason. But it's because not just me, but everyone that's ever worked for me that maybe some exceptions, but they don't work here anymore. But I can tell you right now, the people that work here today, now, all my employees, they believe in this. And they've gone through hell with me through this, you included, and it's not been fun. But the only reason we're here is because we believe in it. That's it. If you wrote down what I went through for the past 2 years in a job description, there's no way on earth I would apply for that job. And no matter how much it paid, it's like that's so the only reason we're here is because we believe in this. And if you don't believe me, you're entitled to your opinion. But just know this: if you're an influencer out there and you want to comment on this, by all means, please do. But also know, I'm here, and I am willing to talk to you straight up. Like, you can spin whatever you want to spin, but just know that I want everyone to know that if you refuse to talk to me, then that's going to say something more about you than me. Because I'm here and I'm saying this right now, I am ready to talk to anybody who wants to talk about this, because people need to know the truth. And in fact, the more informed you are about this, the more effective we're going to be. Because you said earlier, you guys all clamoring, not all, I mean, just the few of you out there that are like, oh, you betrayed us, you bent the knee. That's the narrative they want you to say. That's the whole point of that. What that guy read, I'm getting more specific. What influencers are reading is on a press release released within about an hour of me signing the settlement. This is how fast. I'll give you an example. When I was raided in 2020, I was reading the Wall Street Journal article about the raid while the raid was happening. I was on my phone and I looked at the attorney guy that was here. We'll just call him PW. And I was like, PW, that's a Wall Street Journal article. You guys leaked this to the media before you got here. Because that's what this is, guys. We're not in a game of what is legally right or wrong, even though that's at bottom what we are all believing. And I believe in that we're in our rights to do what we do. It is a game of public opinion. And I'm asking you to not be played by that. And don't let subpar influencers lead you down a path that causes you to do that. I'm here to talk, and I'm here to say the truth to you. And it's not, and I'll say things that are not so flattering that P80 is going through and has done, but I tell you what, we don't violate our principles. That we don't do. I'm not a perfect CEO or business owner by any stretch. I am the best I can be, but what I don't do is I don't violate my principles. And I go through a lot of pain because of that. But also I enjoy a lot of success because of that. So, right now, Polymer 80 is broadening, if I can just do a little plug positively, we're broadening our breadth of products that we provide through other partners in the industry that are really helping us and stepping up because they know that we don't violate our principles because they do business with us. And they're allowing, we're expanding our product breadth. So really supporting us is just go to polymer80.com. There's more stuff now, like variety, and every day we're adding more stuff. So more variety of products are going to be there every day. So every little bit helps. You guys, that's what's keeping us alive and floating, and I'm doing everything I can to fight.
And if you're a manufacturer or something that you think that we might be interested in, or something that our customers would be interested in,
give us a call.
Well, we maybe even if we could just give you a shout out.
But,
maybe there's a partnership there.
Yeah, we're open to other. As long as it's a good product, we'll test it. We'll make sure it's good. And you want to. We still have a very wide reach. We're a popular company, and you want to move your product through us. I'm all ears because we want to provide as much to our customers as possible, and we're doing everything we can in this season of difficulty to survive and see it through. And by the way, I feel strongly that we're kind of at the tail end of all these civil cases because they unloaded all cannons on us. And the good news about that is they played a lot of cards that you can only play once. And that's the other advantage of the settlements, by the way. That card they played, you can call it a precedent all you want. Actually, that card they played can't be played again. And I'm not going to give my enemies the benefit of telling anybody what that is. But they'll run into that barrier when they try it. But the other end of the settlements is like, well, we just closed that door. It can't be, that Pandora's not Pandora's box, but it's actually the opposite. Yeah, you can't reopen that door. It's closed. So yeah, we'll pay the $1 million penalty or whatever to pay the price for that. Yeah, it's worth it because now we're that much more protected. So the more they do, that's why the AR-15s are not picked on anymore. Because they really went after the AR-15 80% lowers, which are not included in the new rule in any real way whatsoever. So it's because they got so specific on it. Now we know the laws have not are not so ambiguous anymore. They're really specific. So now that they've got, because they don't like being specific on laws for that reason, but they're actually forcing themselves to get more and more particular and specific on what they can and cannot go after. And that actually helps us. So it's all about playing smart, and we're playing it smart. And I think we're doing a damn good job. And I want to say thank you to our attorneys that have stuck by us, even in our struggles of being able to pay them, because they have done so much to help with that too. So, that's where we're at. And, again, going back to the plug, polymer.com, more and more products every day. That's what gets us through this. It really is. And those products are shipping. We're restricted legally from shipping other products that a lot of people are waiting for. Thank you for waiting for those. But the rest of it is shipping now. We are shipping. We are fulfilling those orders. And as reflected, our sales are going up actually every week. Actually, we're doing better and better. So that's a good thing. So thank you to those people that have been loyal to us. I don't mean to be all negative, Nancy, but there are influencers out there that have been more honest and understanding of what this actually is, and thank you to them. And so there you go. I that was a huge rabbit hole, but
well, and just to wrap it up, I think one of the sort of things I want everyone to take away from that part of the conversation is, let's try to keep the fratricide to a minimum. Like in this industry, anybody who's is plugged into these rights and in this part of the firearms industry understands like which companies care about Americans' rights, care about the users and the customers, where there are other companies that could give two shits what the laws are. Yes, they make guns, but most of these companies are not part of the United States, so they don't really care because they sell guns in large government contracts. And like just remember that when you're selecting things and picking the Made in America moniker applies a lot more to firearms, I think, than a lot of other products.
True.
Yeah. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll bring you more to you soon. And you guys have a fun day.
Good day. Thanks.